Brenda Larkin thought she could steal my family ranch to cover her $165,000 sports book debt. She didn't just try paperwork. She didn't just bluff. She weaponized the police to erase me from land my family had worked for 3 generations. Big mistake. What Brenda didn't know, what she never bothered to check, was one simple, fatal detail. The ranch was never part of any HOA. Not now, not ever. The association she claimed to run, it was fiction, a paper ghost, a lie dressed up in letterhead and confidence. Watch this. I never thought a single call to 911 could erase an entire life in 12 minutes. The 3-hour drive from San Antonio was supposed to feel final in a good way, healing, a clean line between grief and whatever came next. My 2014 Toyota Corolla hummed along the highway, windows cracked, Texas heat pouring in as I rehearsed the future in my head. 4 months of probate paperwork were finally done, every form filed, every signature stamped, court orders sealed, my grandmother's will confirmed. The ranch was mine now, legally, unquestionably mine. I had quit my apartment lease, I'd lined up remote UX design contracts. The plan was simple: rebuild my life on the same land where my family had rebuilt theirs after droughts, debt, and decades of hard labor. Sun up to sundown, no shortcuts. The last time I made this drive, it was for Grandma Evelyn Cole's funeral. That trip had been heavy, silent, full of things unsaid. This one was supposed to be different. This time I was coming home as the owner. Except the first thing I saw told me something was very, very wrong. Not the rusted cattle gate with the bent hinge I remembered since childhood. Not the leaning fence post my uncle never got around to fixing. Instead, a brand new white sign, bolted to fresh pressure-treated posts, stood like a warning shot. Silver Meadow Estates, HOA private community, no trespassing. The black lettering was sharp, aggressive, confident, too confident. The fence line that used to be sun-faded cedar, splintered and honest, now gleamed with thick white paint, still glossy like it hadn't even fully dried. It looked wrong, like someone had dipped a working ranch in suburban control and tried to pass it off as normal. Near the entrance, mounted deliberately at eye level, a security camera stared back at me. Its dark lens followed my car, a metal vulture. Everything about it was wrong. This land had been zoned agricultural for over 60 years. No sidewalks, no streetlights, no manicured lawns, no community standards. Just mesquite trees, barbed wire, cattle dust, and family history pressed into the soil. I hadn't even killed the engine when the farmhouse door swung open. A woman stepped out like she owned the place and the air around it. She marched toward me with purpose, navy blazer, pressed beige slacks despite the 90-degree heat, blonde hair sprayed into a stiff, perfect helmet that didn't move when she did, a clipboard hugged to her chest like a shield. She had that posture, that confidence, the kind people develop when no one has ever seriously challenged them in public. "I'm Brenda Larkin," she said sharply, stopping a few feet from my car, "president of the Silver Meadow Estates Homeowners Association." She didn't ask who I was. She didn't hesitate. "This is private community property. You need to leave immediately." Every word was calibrated, courtroom clean, designed to make me feel like I was already in the wrong. I stepped out of the car slowly, legs stiff from the drive, eyes glued to that sign like it might dissolve if I stared long enough. "I think there's been a mistake," I said, keeping my voice steady while my pulse spiked. "This ranch has been in my family for generations. My grandmother never mentioned any HOA. For just a split second, her smile faltered. Then it sharpened. Your grandmother failed to pay community assessments for 3 consecutive years. Under state property law, the association exercised its right to recover unpaid dues through a forced sale. This property was legally purchased at auction last month. She opened a manila folder and fanned out documents with theatrical precision. Embossed seals, notarized signatures, neatly formatted pages that screamed authority. Titles like tax sales certificate, notice of default, transfer of ownership. They weren't meant to explain anything. They were meant to overwhelm. The words hit me like a physical blow. Grandma Evelyn paid her property taxes every year without fail. She treated it like a religion. Late fees were sins. The idea that someone had quietly layered HOA fees onto farmland that predated most subdivisions was absurd, impossible, and yet there it was, on paper, looking real enough to ruin me. "That can't be right," I said, stepping closer. "This land's been zoned agricultural since the early 1960s. You can't just retroactively attach HOA rules to a ranch." Brenda's polite mask dropped. "Sir, I understand this is upsetting, but your grandmother's financial issues are not my concern. These documents are filed and notarized. The sale was conducted legally." "They're fake," I said, panic leaking into my voice despite myself. "I have probate documents, the will, court orders, everything. It's all in my car." She didn't blink. She reached into her blazer and pulled out her phone with slow, deliberate calm. "You need to leave now," she said, "or I'll be calling the police." Her thumb hovered on a contact labeled Sheriff Direct. She didn't wait for me to respond. She tapped the screen, turned on speaker, and let me listen as my life was rewritten in real time.
2 rings. 911, what's your emergency? "This is Brenda Larkin at Silver Meadow Estates," she said, instantly switching into concerned citizen mode. "There's a trespasser on legally sold private property refusing to leave." "Ma'am, there's been a mistake," I tried to interrupt. She talked right over me. "He's becoming aggressive and won't listen to reason. I have legal documentation showing the property was sold 6 weeks ago." Just like that, I wasn't an heir. I was a problem. "Officers are en route, ma'am. Please maintain a safe distance." I could hear typing, radio chatter, the machinery of authority locking into place. Brenda met my eyes, satisfaction flickering across her face. This wasn't confusion. This was a setup, and I had walked straight into it. 12 minutes later, gravel crunched behind me as a county SUV pulled in. Deputy Kerr stepped out with the calm efficiency of someone who'd removed 100 trespassers from 100 driveways. Brenda stepped forward immediately, folder extended like evidence on a courtroom drama. "Officer, this individual refuses to vacate private property despite being shown legal documentation," she said smoothly. My hands shook as I shoved my probate papers forward. Deputy Kerr reviewed Brenda's documents first. Her eyebrows rose slightly, impressed by how clean, how professional they looked. When she compared them to mine, confusion flickered across her face. But confusion didn't matter. "Sir, they appear to have valid paperwork. This is a civil matter. You'll need to resolve it in court. If you remain on the property, you could face criminal trespass charges." Standing in the dirt driveway where my grandmother once taught me to ride a bike, something clicked into place. Truth doesn't beat paperwork. Not when the paperwork looks official enough to fool law enforcement. "I'll leave for now," I said quietly, "but this isn't over." And it wasn't. 20 miles down the road, parked at a gas station with my hands still shaking, I made one call. The only person who could explain how my family ranch turned into HOA property overnight. Attorney Janine Price. And if anyone could smell a forgery through a phone screen, it was her. Janine Price's office sat in a converted old house just off the courthouse square.
the kind of place that smelled permanently of burnt coffee, paper cuts, and quiet battles won and lost. The floors creaked in places where generations of anxious clients had paced. Framed diplomas lined the walls, not as decoration, but as quiet proof. The law books were worn, spines cracked, margins annotated, the kind that actually got opened, not just dusted. The receptionist barely looked up when I walked in, mid-50s, sharp eyes, the expression of someone who'd seen every flavor of small-town scam imaginable and never once gasped. Janine listened while I talked. I told her about the sign, the fence, the camera, Brenda's smile, the folder, the 911 call, the deputy telling me to leave my own land like I was a criminal. Janine didn't interrupt, not once. She didn't nod, didn't frown. She just wrote on a yellow legal pad, neat, deliberate strokes, like she was stacking bricks for something solid and heavy. When I finished, she took Brenda's documents and began reading. Page by page, her expression tightened, a crease formed between her brows. She flipped back, then forward again, comparing layouts, signatures, seals. These are professionally formatted, but the legal structure is wrong. She pointed things out with clinical precision. Missing county seals, incorrect notary block language, signatures that don't match any official I've dealt with in this jurisdiction, and I've never, not once, heard of Silver Meadow Estates HOA. She set the papers down carefully, like they might stain the desk. The HOA doesn't exist, she said flatly, which means your president is just a woman with a clipboard. The next 4 hours turned her office into a war room. Phones rang, printers hummed. Nina, her paralegal, pulled the state registry. No HOA entity, no filings, no registered agent, no historical amendments, nothing. Janine pulled deed records back to the 1960s. Clean chain of ownership, agricultural zoning intact, no covenants, no community restrictions, no annexations, no quiet reclassifications. Tax records paid in full, every year, no liens, no delinquency. Every single claim Brenda made collapsed the moment it touched real records. Then Janine leaned back in her chair and said the sentence that made my stomach drop. "She didn't pick you randomly," she said. "She waited for probate." Public records on Brenda Larkin told a story. Rental disputes, evictions narrowly avoided, debt judgments, repossession notices, a pattern of moving towns right before consequences arrived. And then the gambling trail. Sports books, casinos, civil judgments that screamed desperation, not strategy. Someone like this doesn't want a slow win. They want a fast sale, cash in hand, and a clean exit before anyone notices the seams. We filed for emergency injunctive relief first thing the next morning. Hearing set in 5 days. 5 days. Plenty of time for a scammer to do irreversible damage. Janine told me to talk to the neighbors, the real ones, the ones who'd been there long enough to remember the land before it was valuable on paper. That's how I met Miss Darlene Wexler. She lived down the road in a house that looked like it had grown there organically. White hair, bent frame, eyes sharp as broken glass, the kind of memory that didn't fade, it sharpened. When I explained what happened, she went quiet.
Then she sighed. "Oh, honey," she said softly, "that explains everything." Brenda had come by months earlier, asking questions that didn't belong to a stranger, talking about development opportunities, wondering out loud if the ranch could be converted, testing the idea like someone checking whether a door was locked, questions that only make sense if you're planning to take something. That night, I barely slept, and on Friday afternoon, the next escalation arrived by certified mail. Emergency demolition order, unsafe structures, the barn, the grain silo, insurance liability, community safety, 48 hours, a paper guillotine with a deadline designed to outrun the court. I drove back Sunday night with camping gear and camera equipment, because if someone was going to erase my family history, they were going to do it in front of witnesses and in front of lenses. When I arrived, a construction crew was already staging equipment, generators, floodlights, heavy machinery. One worker leaned close and muttered, "She's paying triple overtime." Monday morning, 7 a.m., the bulldozer rolled toward the barn like a predator. Oh no, she was really going to bulldoze history to hide her fraud. If you want to see this bulldozer stopped, hit like and keep watching, because what happened next was not what she expected. I parked my Corolla directly behind the barn, blocking the approach. The foreman walked over, clipboard already out, irritation etched into his face. "Sir, we have permits and work orders. Move your car." "This isn't HOA property," I said, stepping out and raising my camera. "Those documents are fake. She has no authority." Then Brenda arrived, not alone. Black SUV, Sheriff Jackson, and a local TV news crew already mic'd up, lenses rolling, like they were filming a story Brenda had written herself. She spoke calmly to the reporter, smile perfect, voice smooth. "This individual has been harassing our community for weeks, making false claims. Public safety has to come first." The reporter nodded like she was following a script. I stood on the barn steps recording everything, and something clicked. This wasn't just fraud. This was narrative warfare. She wasn't stealing land. She was stealing credibility. Then Janine pulled up, like cavalry. She walked straight to the foreman and handed him a court order with the county seal. "All work is halted pending a full hearing," she said clearly. "This property is under legal dispute." The bulldozer engine died. Silence. Brenda's face tightened, the first visible crack. "This is just delaying the inevitable," she snapped loudly for the cameras. As the crew packed up, I overheard her on the phone near the gate, voice sharp with panic. "No, I can't wait anymore," she hissed, unaware how far sound carries in open country. "The sharks are circling. That lawyer is asking questions. We move to the next phase now." 3 days later, the next phase arrived. A petition, a motion, court-ordered competency assessment. Translation: if she could label me unstable, she could erase my ability to fight back. The filing reframed my defense of my inheritance as paranoia, my documentation as obsession, my resistance as dangerous behavior. Community testimonials appeared, signed by people who weren't even real neighbors. Then came Dr. Lydia Harrow, recently moved, underfunded clinic, already holding a file that felt far too thick for a first meeting. "Why do you believe everyone is lying about the property sale?" she asked, a trap disguised as concern. And for the first time, after weeks of pressure, something terrifying crept in. Self-doubt. Maybe grief was distorting things. Maybe I missed something. Maybe the world really could gaslight you into handing over your own life. That's when Brenda's settlement offer arrived. Cash to go away quietly. Cash to get help. And I'll be honest, for a moment, I considered it. Because fighting a fraudster is hard, but fighting a fraudster who convinced your community you're crazy, that can break you. Then Miss Wexler called. "Honey," she said, voice alive with certainty, "I found a box in my attic, your grandmother's correspondence, decades of letters, and there's one document in here." She paused. "One document that ends this whole thing." Ms. Wexler's attic smelled like dust, cedar, and time itself. Not the musty rot of neglect, the dry, honest scent of paper that had survived because someone cared enough to keep it. Sunlight filtered through a small window, catching particles in the air like suspended memories. Cardboard boxes lined the walls, stacked neatly and labeled in my grandmother's handwriting. 40 years of correspondence, zoning letters, county permits, tax confirmations, survey maps, handwritten notes in careful cursive explaining why each document mattered. My grandmother documented everything, not because she was paranoid, but because she never trusted official-looking authority without proof. She believed paper only mattered if it could stand up to scrutiny.
We carried box after box down to Ms. Wexler's kitchen and spread the contents across the table like archaeologists rebuilding a lost civilization. Page by page, a timeline emerged, and then we found it, the document. A county planning letter dated decades ago, written in plain, unmistakable language. No ambiguity, no loopholes, no interpretive wiggle room. It stated clearly that the ranch remained independent of any homeowner association and that its agricultural zoning prohibited HOA fees, assessments, or authority without explicit owner consent and formal rezoning approved by the county. It wasn't just helpful,